The second way we take power away from these wounds is by doing the energy release work, the grief and anger work. You know, because emotions are actual energy that manifests in our body, and so we want to be able to start releasing it because it's repressed and suppressed and under pressure. That's why it's like a landmine. And so the first part, you know, one part of that is the grief work. It's real important to do the grief work, you know. And we have, that's part, again, where the observer is really helpful, because one of the things the ego does, in childhood we learned that feeling anything too strong was not okay, you know, including too happy. We got punished for being too exuberant and happy, you know, type. And so what the ego does is tries to shut down any emotions, tries to tamp them down and repress them. And one of the things that happens when we start getting emotional is that ego causes us to close our throats and stop breathing. You know, those times when we're talking about something and the grief starts coming up, we close our throats and stop breathing. You know? And it drives me crazy to see this. You know, you see this like on the History Channel. Somebody's talking about something that happened 30 years ago. You know, they start getting emotional, they shut down, and then they pull it together, get under control, and then they apologize for having feelings about some horrible thing that happened 30 years ago that they never grieved. You know? Really, I'm not happy about that. But what we want to do instead, the reason we're closing our throat is because there's energy trying to get out, and we want to help it out. So that's where we have the observer come in and say, this is grief, this is good, we want to get this out. Inhale, deep breath. We start taking deep breaths into wherever we can feel it, we feel it in our body, where there's a tension, some tightness, some density. And when we start breathing into it, and sometimes it helps people to like visualize breathing white light in there. So we breathe into it, and when we breathe, when a grief issue is close to the surface and we start breathing into it, it starts breaking up the energy. Little balls of energy start breaking out. That's what sobs are, is little balls of energy. So we inhale into it, sob, 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 cry, cry, cry. Inhale into it, sob, 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 cry, cry, cry. Inhale into it, sob, 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 cry, cry, cry. When we can cry like that for the child we were, that's a really powerful level of healing. To be able to go in and release some of that energy around that wound. You know, and really honor that wound and own those feelings. You know, that's part of the reason it's so important to set boundaries with the critical parent voice, because we may have sobbed and cried in the past, but we judged and shamed ourselves for it. That wasn't a healthy release process, you know. And we may have sobbed and cried and thought it was all about the last relationship. If we're doing that, we're just looking at the tip of the iceberg. You know, because we've got all these repeating, we've got all these abandonment wounds that have just been repeated over and over again. We've got a whole stack of abandonment, a whole stack of betrayal. If we're just looking at the top ones, you know, we got a long ways to go. You know, what we want to do is get down here close to the cause and take power away from that whole, around that whole betrayal issue or that whole abandonment issue. And so, it's really powerful to be able to go back and cry for that child. It's just amazing to watch people go through this process. You know, it can be like a machine gun going off, stop, 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 stop sometimes. You know, because there's so much in there. And you know, I used to feel when I got close to the time when it was time to do my emotional work, I was afraid that if I ever started crying, I'd just end up in a rubber room someplace locked up. You know, if I ever got in touch with a rage, I'd just go up and down the street shooting people. But that's not what happened. I got a little bit out at a time. I got the tools and the resources I needed to get it out at the time I needed to get it out. And one of the things I realized later is that we can't start crying and just cry forever. We have a built-in fail-safe mechanism, we human beings. Can't cry for very long without stopping to blow your nose. Because snot is also emotional energy being released, manifested. You know? Tears are releasing chemicals, snot, the sobs, that's all about the part of the release process. And so it's real important to own our right to those feelings. Own that child. That's another part, you know, owning that child's feelings and honoring them is part of the forgiveness process also.